Hello, this is from Caracas. I'm Ray Gomez. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro presented the country's national address to the Constituent Assembly. On this, I will talk with Professor Julio Escalona. Join us for the next few minutes. Professor, how are you? Well, first of all, why did President Maduro present his State of the Nation's address to the National Constituent Assembly instead of presenting it to the Parliament?
Bueno, hay que conocer un poco el proceso.
Well, you have to know a little about the process. The National Assembly declared itself in contempt before Venezuelan authorities. That is, a minor problem that could have been solved by the National Assembly related to a fraud detected in the Amazon state. Then, the only thing they had to do, as evidence was presented, was to disengage those three parliamentarians, and nothing would have happened. Since they did not disincorporate them, but incorporate them, and the Supreme Court has said that they cannot be parliamentarians under Venezuelan law, that assembly declares itself in contempt of court before a higher authority. Therefore, that body cannot recognize it. It is like being taken to a court, the court makes a ruling, and you escape. When escaping, you are in contempt. Well, they escape. Because of the violence of the past year, in the months of April, May, and June, the situation in the country reaches an impasse. Or we went to war, or we looked for a political solution. The President Maduro very wisely found a political solution: to convene a Constituent National Assembly to which the current constitution authorizes. Then, appealing to Article 347 of this constitution, is fully empowered to convene the Constituent National Assembly. He summons it for July the 30th of last year. That convocation was boycotted by the opposition or by the leading sectors of the opposition that were already in an increasing process of violence. They did not suppose the reaction of the Venezuelan people. The Venezuelan people turned to vote. Well, there are videos of people crossing rivers by swimming, of all people who left the identity card hidden in their shoes to be able to pass. Of that, there are really heroic stories, and that established a point of departure for peace, that guaranteed peace on the streets at least. This gave a political victory to President Maduro and gave great authority to the Constituent National Assembly, even when the opposition does not recognize it. It's recognized by the people, and abroad they had no other way than recognize it, because the National Assembly does not work, that's not quorum, it doesn't meet. They should have commissions to deal with the different issues in the country: the employment, unemployment, economic crisis, health, education, etc. There are no such commissions. In fact, people turn to us, to the Constituent and National Assembly. I am a constituent. We have no mandate to deal with those teams.
By the way, what does a person like you do at the Constituent Assembly? I mean, the deputies at the Constituent Assembly, what do they do currently?
Well, currently we are dealing with the mandate that the Constitution gave us, writing a new Constitution, mainly, and those are the mandates that...
Will it be a new constitution or the consolidation of the current constitution?
The Constitution says clearly to write a constitution. It is the power of the Constituent Assembly if it reinforces the one that reforms it, if it accommodates it. It is an absolutely sovereign matter, the Constituent National Assembly. What is mandate of the Constituent National Assembly is not for address the daily problems of the population. That is the task of the National Assembly. We have had to dedicate efforts together with the National Constituent Assembly. The Constituent National Assembly is absolutely legitimate, not just because the election was clean, as confirmed by all the international delegates who came. The elections in Venezuela are sponsored by dozens, even hundreds of international observers. What they don't have is authority to intervene, which is what they would like, to send a delegate from the United States to be getting into the tables. That can be because we are a sovereign country. That is what can be done. But elections in Venezuela are absolutely supervised and audited. The allegations of fraud that has made the opposition have a problem. There is a member of the National Electoral Council that is of the opposition. That man has never denounced the fraud. Then they have witnesses. At all the tables in the country, there is not a single witness who has come out to say that there is a fraud. That's what they say for political reasons.
Isn't it a contradiction?
Of course, but the international press and the international voyeur ignore it because President Carter, who came here, reviewed it, audited,
Belonging to Carter's foundation.
said it was the best process, the best system he knew in the world because I do not remember, but there are dozens of audits, step by step. There is no step that is not audited. With the presence of the opposition, the public, many acts are open to the public. Then the public can be present. There is a guarantee based on those who know about statistics. Now it's obvious. Votes are audited. When voting, the machine issues a receipt that is put into a box machine and vote in a tangible way. Then, at the end of the process, more than 50% are audited at random from the whole country. It is counted then. Here is the record that counts the machine. And here are the votes that we are counting to which candidate they belong. And that has never been different, because there is no better proof than that.
Okay, on the president's address to the nation, Maduro said that 2017 was a year of social advances. For instance, the consolidation of the so-called club. I'm asking you, how much were the local food committees consolidated last year?
I answered the question concretely, but that question deserves a comment. I'm going to answer the first. The clubs have been a very important instrument. It was a proposal of President Maduro, who has continued consolidating it in neighborhoods and towns. That is, both in the cities and in the towns of the interior, and has been an important instrument to face scarcity, which is an induced scarcity. It is not a shortage as a result of a decayed economy in Venezuela. No, the internal gross product has not declined. Numbers are there and can be searched on the internet. That has been replaced by a process of popular organization with the correspondence and action of the state. This has been guaranteeing to supply the town even when there is. So, what I want is to make a general comment because this president's speech was very important. Because first, it is the speech of a president of a sovereign country. It is an independent country, which does not accept being protected by any state other than the power of the people from Venezuela. That is a sovereign state. It was a speech aimed at guaranteeing the elections of this year, 2018. Apart from whoever listens to me now and listens to Jorge Rodriguez's previous interventions, will even know that the guarantees are Venezuela had not accepted that the observers came from anywhere, but from equally sovereign countries, not countries of the left or of the right, but sovereign countries. Well, observers can come from the United States. They are going to be in this process. Then there is no reason to object. President Maduro gave those guarantees ratified by Jorge Rodriguez in the Dominican Republic. Also, it is a discourse of protection of the people of Venezuela that is subjected to an economic war characterized by an induced inflation, which more than induced is mere speculation. Well, I do not think that anyone that is listening can suppose that in the course of a year, prices, production costs, can be altered by 3,000%, by 2,000%. That is an exaggeration. There should be an economic situation that is not visible. Anyone who sees the Venezuelan situation, it is difficult. But you don't see people dying in the street. You don't see people in the street looting supermarkets, which is also promoted sometimes. But the truth is that with everything that was done internationally, that is why journalists who come from abroad, when they arrive here, they are surprised, because they expect to find a country in civil war, people killing each other in the street, and it is not like that. As difficult as this situation is, the situation is carried away. You can leave. Then, President Maduro, in order to reinforce that, has given economic, social guarantees to the poor.
Despite the economic war, you've said, and the sanctions imposed by the United States, 1,900,000 homes were built in 2017. And President Maduro announced that he will hand over the 2 million homes set as the objective by 2018. Could this be possible? How?
Bueno, el presidente Maduro ha anunciado, por ejemplo,
President Maduro has announced, among the ones that you appointed, that he will protect pregnant women. That is very important, to protect the pregnant woman, and not only to protect the mother, which is extremely important. We must protect the boy or girl who will be born, and to guarantee a future to that baby. That budget is already scheduled. He has announced that he will complete the protection of the elderly, which is not only the pension, but it has to do with health, with attention to accidents, attention in relation to the family. That is calculated in the budget also. That is to say, all the measures that the President announced related to social protection are duly guaranteed in the budget that was already elaborated.
President Maduro also highlighted the implementation of the Carnet de la Patria. For those who are watching us now, what is the Carnet de la Patria and who are benefited from this social system?
Let me show it.
Okay. So that's
I
the
have it
Carnet de la
here.
Patria. The national card for people who do not speak Spanish and do not understand what we are talking about. Professor Escalon is going to show us.
This is the identity card of the country. It has a VQR code that allows you to identify who has it, but not to identify it for security reasons, which is what some people say. No, that's to sign him with the police.
So you have been benefited by the Carnet de la Patria, as we can see.
Well, for example, President Maduro gave 2 bonuses,
Okay.
Christmas bonus and the 3 wise men bonus, which is celebrated in many areas of Venezuela. Then, that bonus had been assigned by this card, by the code that it has. That is to say, that in the code are not identified but the people.
Would you please let me? That's the code
Exactamente.
he's talking about.
That code allows, that is an anonymous code that doesn't let you know if you're on the left, if you're on the right, if you vote like this, if you vote like that. It's related to a people who are in a range in which they can be a beneficiary of that bond because of their socio-economic situation. Then, one of the reasons for this bonus is to guide public policies of attention to the citizen. And that is why this card is important.
Thank you very much. Well, President Maduro also announced that new financial ideas, such as the implementation of the cryptocurrency called Petro, will be consolidated this year. What do you think of this initiative created to face the economic war in Venezuela?
That is a very important initiative, also unpublished, among other things because, generally, virtual currencies do not have physical support. This has been a very important physical support, that is petroleum, and President Maduro has even specified the petroleum of the oil belt of the Orinoco in this sector that has 5 billion barrels of oil. He has been very clear with that. This has opportunities as well as risks. Any relevant policy measure is like this.
What are the opportunities?
The opportunity is that it gives us the possibility of becoming independent of the dollar today. The dollar today is a speculative dollar that is designed in Florida through a website and is changing at will of speculators.
At a web page.
And is the main reference for prices in Venezuela. But it is clearly determined that this dollar has nothing to do with the economic situation of Venezuela. The way traditionally economists calculate the relationship of one currency with another is that it divides the money supply that exists between the international reserves in dollars, and that result, that quotient, is the parity of the bolívar respect to dollar.
Entre las reservas internacionales en dólares. Y ese resultado se cocina.
If someone takes the job of searching, that is on the internet, the money supply of Venezuela in bolívares and divide it between international reserves that are in dollars of Venezuela, we'll have the quotient that is far away that this web page establishes and is totally conspirative. Instead of calling it dollar today, you have to call it a criminal dollar, a war dollar, because that's what it is, a war dollar, a criminal dollar, a dollar to cause shortages, above all, to encourage a psychological war against the people of Venezuela, who is oriented to maintain the anguish, discomfort, fear. That is the role of that currency, and that is an eminently political and war road.
You've said there were opportunities, but there were also risks. What are they?
I do not talk much about the risks, because I can be giving some information to other people, but it is logical that by putting as a reserve, as a backup, the oil wealth of Venezuela, this opens up to speculative manipulation, but it can be focused, and I think the government will know how to do it. But well, one of the risks is that I won't go into further detail, not because I do not know, but because I must not say. This is a government measure of the President of the Republic, who is really authorized to talk about this.
The President also thanked the Attorney General's struggle against the PDVSA corruption scheme in the Orinoco oil belt. Could you tell us more on this? What has been happening after Tarek William Saab took office last year?
Bueno, mira, PDVSA viene siendo una especie de caja negra.
PDVSA has been a kind of black box. Sorry, because this has a racist connotation, because it can be a white box, a red box. That has an association with aviation. When a plane crashes, they look for what they call the black box, where are all the secrets of what happened. Then, we have been saying in Venezuela that PDVSA is being a black box. We thought that situation had disappeared after the oil strike of 2002-2003. I suppose that the audience must have information of it, to paralyze the entire oil industry and overthrow the government, because there is no political action that the opposition has undertaken since President Chavez won the elections other than to overthrow him. Then, to overthrow the government. They took the oil industry. It was paralyzed, but the government managed to overcome that. You want to know how? Mainly with the action of the oil workers who achieved, although people do not believe it, to reestablish computer networks and part of the important sites, as it was a gas tank in the center of the country. I know the person who activated, in front of all the technicians and producers. He was a man who worked near my house repairing computers. He has studied and was the one that managed to recover that distribution center. Then, the action of the oil workers was decisive. It was believed that with the new directive, and this behavior of the oil workers would reestablish a union between government, PDVSA board, and working people. It wasn't so, and Mr. Rafael Ramirez has to come to the country to present accounts of what he did, because there are serious accusations regarding his management.
Who is Rafael Ramirez?
Era el presidente de PDVSA.
He was the president of PDVSA until recently. During his tenure, oil production began to fall, but he managed to hide it through accounting manipulations. This is what he has to come to testify, and I'm not going to advance much on that.
And what has Attorney General Tarek William Saab been doing?
When Tarek William Saab takes the Constituent Assembly as Attorney General of the Republic, that is, do a serious void that was in the prosecution, because the prosecution had been taken by a lady who was obviously involved in the revolutionary process, but that had changed. But that was not known. Then there were complaints about PDVSA, and she, as it is said, she kept them. She let them go. That's how this problem ran until it became a crisis today. When the prosecutor is dismissed and the President of the Republic assigns Tarek William Saab, who is a revolutionary, he goes with the mission of opening that black box. And when he begins to open it, it appears all that is already of public domain, that there are serious problems of corruption, and that is being faced by Tarek William Saab with the full support of the President of the Republic and the National Constituent Assembly.
Some analysts say that the Venezuelan opposition does not have trustworthy leaders nor political parties at present. Is this true? What is the current situation of the opposition wing in Venezuela?
The opposition problem. The opposition has never trusted its own strength and has never trusted the strength that the opposition people can have. There is an oppositional people that manifests, that votes or abstains, but there is an opposition people, and that is not necessary to hide it. It has never been the pretense of anyone linked to the government or the PSUV party to hide that. It turns out that the direction of the opposition is guided mainly by the interests of the leading domains of the United States, not even the United States, but by a leading domain that is ultra-reactionary, ultra-rightist, and it's manipulating everything that happens with the opposition of Venezuela. That has been because, as all the opposition is not like that, the opposition is not like that. The opposition leadership is not all that, and it has become fragmented. The most recalcitrant group remains in the leading dome of the Venezuelan opposition, the one that obeys the orientations of Marco Rubio in the United States Congress, for example, and in general, of elements of the Department of State that follow a policy oriented to overthrow the Bolivarian government.
And what would happen if the opposition wing decides not to participate in the election due this year, as President Maduro himself denounced that they are planning?
The opposition has been participating in the negotiations lately. It always retires, they return. It returns because there is a strong pressure in Venezuela to negotiate, because in Venezuela nobody wants the war. And it would be interesting that one day in some program you put the song, "For the war, nothing," because the truth is that the people of Venezuela want a peaceful solution, wants an electoral solution, and of course, when the opposition moves away from this, it also moves away from its popular bases that have. The opposition is currently at a crossroad. It has to yield to the pressure it has, including opposition leaders, and from its popular base to participate in elections, to make the political game that is open in Venezuela, because the process in Venezuela is different from Cuba. Revolutionary War triumphed in Cuba. Here, with triumph with an electoral process with rules that, of course, must be fulfilled. No one can object the government which fulfills these rules. Nobody has come to Venezuela to say otherwise. Those who have come aside, and President Carter has been to say that this is a system, according to President Carter, almost perfect. Then, in these elections that are approaching, the President Maduro, in his speech I pointed out a while ago, gave clear guarantees that Jorge Rodriguez confirmed that there will be broadly free elections, open to participation. What's going on? Sectors of the opposition's leadership, know that they will lose. In the United States, those who speak it also know that they will lose. Then, what they want is to overthrow the government, an electoral victory of President Maduro, who is the candidate of the Venezuelan people, legitimize him totally. Because it can't be that we cheated when we voted for the Constituent Assembly. We cheated in the election of governors. We cheated in the election of mayors. Will we cheat also in order that Maduro wins the elections of 2018? It's a lot of absurdity for the public to believe. Then they preferred a violent solution before the elections, and that's the drama that we have now. Politically, we have to defeat them and to assure peace in Venezuela.
What are your predictions for 2018?
I believe that the people will prevail. The Venezuelan people, despite all the difficult circumstances we are experiencing now, by putting them to choose, first between peace and war, second between the loss of sovereignty and having sovereignty. I believe that the Venezuelan people know how it's going to be pronounced, and that is the guarantee that this process has, that people, amidst the difficulties, because it has matured in its political vocation, they know where to go. This is why we owe a lot to President Chavez. President Chavez, among other things he did many. He retold Venezuela's history, and Chavez, good countrymen in Venezuela are truly storytellers. Chavez, in the program Hello President, who did it every Sunday, and in all his interventions, he devoted himself to tell us our history, to tell us about Bolivar, about battles, about defeats, about relation with the United States, already at that time, about relation in general with the developed world. So, Chavez was, in a story so tasty, told comfortably sitting on a chair in the courtyard of a country house, telling the story, and Venezuelan people, the history that we know now is the one that told us Chavez. Then the Venezuelan people is able to distinguish what is false, what is a lie, and recognizing the mistakes of the Bolivarian process, which it has many, recognizing that there is corruption, it is evident, recognizing all that. Venezuelan people also knows that this process has protected them, defended the parents and also the children, and it is evident. So I believe for that reason, this process must come out triumphant.
Professor, thank you very much.
I am grateful to you for this invitation, which has made it possible to explain the Venezuelan situation to many people, in any case, the people who are all over the continent and throughout the world.
Thank you. Professor Julio Escalona. This is from Caracas. Thank you for joining us.